Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this progressive town hall. I'm so happy you all are here. So for everyone, I'm Dr. Arati. I am running for Congress in New Jersey's 5th District, and I have some great panelists with us today on our town hall. So we have Dr. Adam, we have Adam Green from Progressive Change Campaign Committee, although right now your screen says Stephanie Adam. Just an FYI. We have Leah Greenberg from Indivisible. We have Helen Brosnan, as well as Varshini Prakash from Sunrise Movement. I'm so pleased to have you all on today, especially today in the wake of some great news from yesterday from New York. And I'd love to get started. Do each one of you just want to talk a little bit about you all, the organizations that you head, and really what yesterday means to you. That would be great. Leah, do you want to start? Oh, wait, hang on, you're muted. Hang on one second.
There we go. Yes, great. Thank you so much for the chance to be here today. It is an amazing thing to be on this call with such incredible folks and to talk about such an incredible campaign. So I'm the co-executive director of Indivisible, which is a national organization that supports a movement of local grassroots indivisible groups. We got started shortly after the election of Donald Trump in 2017 when we wrote a guide to congressional advocacy that went viral, prompting the formation of thousands of local grassroots groups. We started the organization to support and provide strategic guidance and uplift indivisible groups around the country in the fight to take on the Trump agenda, defeat Donald Trump and his enablers, and ultimately build a progressive future. And we're really excited to see, we were excited to see the results last night everywhere from in Jamal Bowman's victory in New York to the very, very close and soon to be determined results in Kentucky. I think what we're seeing across the board is people are looking for folks who are talking about solutions that actually meet the scope of the problems, who are talking about real change, not patchwork solutions. People are embracing a progressive agenda. They are embracing a new generation of leaders. And we're excited to see that. And we're excited to be a part of it here in New Jersey's 5th.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Leah, for that. And I agree completely. I think that yesterday really showed that it's time for change and that folks across America, and particularly I think in NJ5, are ready for that change. And we're going to see that happen on July 7th. Helen, would you like to talk about Rise to Run? And I'd love to hear your thoughts about yesterday as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so delighted to be with this wonderful, powerful group, and so excited to bring home a win for you very soon. Thanks to all the work that everyone on this call is doing. So I actually most recently, as of last night, was running the independent expenditure for Jamal Bowman's race with Justice Democrats, whom I love and appreciate deeply. Also pushing forward many of the things that we're talking about. And before that, I was with Elizabeth Warren's campaign, also running on many of the issues you're running on. And just generally a fan of people like yourself who are willing to take on deeply entrenched, horrifying Democrats, or people who call themselves Democrats, and always a person in that work, and just feeling the energy of last night and the excitement of all the wins we had, and especially feeling the power from all the groups that invested early and invested in a very deep, meaningful way in a lot of the elections in New York and of course Kentucky, including everyone on the phone right now, which is very exciting. And so I think we're just seeing a total tidal wave in terms of people feeling like they can center their demands in electoral spaces and make those demands, and have people like you, Doctor, who are meeting those demands, and sort of often taking your cues from people in the streets and people in our movement. So yeah, very excited to be here.
Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you've done and all of you've done on these races. I think it really showed what an exciting time it is to be progressive, to be part of the progressive movement, because especially with the pandemic, we are centering on the real needs of people, and they have not been as apparent, I think, as they are now in a very long time. And the fact is that people are responding to that. What we were talking about resonates. Definitely we see that in NJ5 as well. So, I really appreciate appreciate that. One of our first folks who'd endorsed and invested in our campaign was the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, and Adam's here from that as well. And I'd love to hear from you, Adam, about the kinds of things that have been happening in 2020, what happened yesterday, and how you think. And I know that you know a little bit of New Jersey and NJ5. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the energy and what it means for us in NJ5.
Sure. I am actually zooming in live from New Jersey right now.
That's great.
At my parents' house for Father's Day. But NJ5 is near and dear to my heart, and we have a lot of members in the district. PCCC, I've been around for about 11 years. We train a lot of candidates, do some online fundraising and organizing, and issue advocacy. And we were thrilled that Arati was one of our first endorsed candidates this cycle because she's just such a rock star. We see this as actually for people who are hit on many angles with requests for help, right? They're getting pinged by presidential campaigns, Senate campaigns, House campaigns, local races. We know that people struggle to figure out, well, where should I put my time and energy? And, we really put this particular race at the very top of the primary priority list, because it's not just about taking on someone who's weak as a liberal. It's not just taking on someone who votes wrong sometimes when they have the chance to vote wrong. We are up against basically the Joe Lieberman of the House Democratic Caucus. Somebody who, when House Democratic leadership actually wants to do the right thing, like stop caging kids at the border, will proactively organize other members to undermine Democrats when they're on the verge of doing the right thing. Just like Joe Lieberman, pretty much nixed a deal that would have extended Medicare down to age 55 when it was completely in our grasp. And to be able to replace someone like that, an underminer in chief, with someone who's a bold progressive rock star, someone who isn't just a checklist yes for things like Medicare for all or Green New Deal, but a proactive leader in Arati, and someone who has earned so much trust in the community at the local level, just seems like a golden opportunity. So all the aspirations that we have for this election cycle as we work yesterday to elect Jamal and Charles and so many other people, all of it is for naught if we don't have Democratic caucus will actually be there when the time is right. So we predict that if Arati gets elected, she will be part of Squad 2. She'll be leading the pack, and we're just thrilled to be mobilizing on your behalf.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that, Adam. And it means a lot being one of the first ones, and also knowing New Jersey. You're there now, so that's and we're happy to have you out here in New Jersey. One of the things that I've been most passionate about my entire life, one of the things that I focused on the most as a council member is climate change and the climate crisis that we have right now. Look, we have crises upon crises upon crises that we're living through right now. When we started this, we were talking about the everyday crises that we were facing. We were talking about our democracy being as fragile, perhaps at its most fragile at this time, because the norms are being thrown out the window. A couple of months ago, seems like an eternity ago in some ways, we had COVID-19 ravaging us, particularly up here in the New York, New Jersey region for now, as it's plateauing. And we mobilized, and I think the response in so many ways was inadequate, right? But we all mobilized. We did everything that we could in some ways, and a lot that could be done in other ways to try and keep us safe. Meanwhile, we have this climate crisis, which is just as much, if not worse, actually a disaster that is looming, that we have been raising alarm bells for, to the point where now they're shrieking, right? And people in power are just not paying attention to it. And then in comes Sunrise Movement. And it felt as if there was so much energy, so much power especially with the young people leading this and leading this change. And so for me, a few weeks ago, I was gratified and honored to have 6 local hubs for Sunrise endorse my campaign. And then having the national endorsement from Sunrise has meant so much to me because of the kinds of things and because of the values that I've been trying to live and the change that I've been trying to do at the local level. And Varshini, I have to say, it's incredible what you've done. I'd love for you to share more.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Arati. I'm really happy to be here and happy to be here with all of you. Like, everybody on this call is my hero, and I'm just thrilled that we all get to see each other, and for such a good reason. So for those of you who don't know, Sunrise Movement, we started about 3 years ago, almost exactly. We were just a group of young people that were totally fed up with the way in which our political system, our politicians, our institutions were acting like the planet wasn't literally on fire, and acting like we weren't careening towards a global climate catastrophe that was literally going to tear apart everything that we know about human civilization. And so we were young people who were looking for, we don't have a political vehicle right now to voice our frustration, to voice our hope, to voice our dreams for the future that we believe we deserve. We need something that can actually carry that for not just us, but millions of young people out there. And that's really how Sunrise was born. And we are a grassroots movement comprised of young people from the ages of 9 to, I don't know, I'm not going to say the oldest member of our movement, but, comprised primarily of teens and 20-somethings who are charged up and who are clear that we cannot leave power on the table any longer, that young people have a voice, that we need it to be heard, that we are going to be demanding about achieving solutions to this crisis that are at the scale of this crisis, that do not leave communities of color and low-income folks behind, that are solutions that actually work for everybody, and that they are on the timeline that we need to be acting upon to guarantee a future for all of us and address the immediate concerns that so many people, Black and brown people, poor people, are facing right now because of environmental pollution and the climate crisis. And so we're a movement that does both, the protests and the organizing, the grassroots organizing side of things, but we also engage politically. And we went all in with our folks at Justice Democrats and PCCC and Indivisible and other folks on the Jamal Bowman race, on Charles Booker. And I just watched a bunch of kids make literally hundreds of thousands of phone calls in the last few weeks. I watched a literal 14-year-old lead our phone banks like every single day. You should look at our Instagram. It's unbelievable. I literally can't look at it without crying. And I think what the last 24 hours have shown me is the power of young people to determine the outcomes, the political outcomes of this country if we so choose. Folks like Amy McGrath in Kentucky have a $40 million war chest. Elliot Engel in New York 16 has been an incumbent that was backed by everyone from Hillary Clinton to Chuck Schumer. And I think this moment is all about saying it does not matter just because you have a D next to your name. That does not mean that you are a real Democrat. That doesn't mean you stand for the values that support and benefit working people, and for a platform that is actually about improving the lives of the majority of Americans in this country. And so that's why I'm so excited about your race, Arati. I think you are the embodiment of this. I think you are the definition of a Democrat that is standing up with a real platform, a real set of policies that are based in your deepest values, that are morally legitimate. And I'm just so excited that Sunrise has her back in all of this. And if any of the hubs are out there and watching this right now, thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for how much you've been throwing down. We love you and appreciate you.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that so much. I mean, I have to say, young people fueling movements, leading movements is something that is a theme, that I've benefited from in my campaign as well. We have more than 100 student fellows who've been working mostly remotely, a number of them from Sunrise. And I will absolutely 100% tell you call phone banking, the text banking, all the kinds of things that they do, social media, when they're out there and they are passionate and their power is real and they're realizing it. And it's been incredible because they have been the engine behind this grassroots energy that we have with our campaign. And I agree with what you're talking about, right? It is about that grassroots energy. And I think all of us are talking about that here, right? It's not about how much money you get from corporate PACs. We're talking about $40 million. We're talking about, hundreds of other $1 million. Look, my opponent embraces gleefully his nickname, which is the human fundraising machine, right? So when you have a nickname like that, it is very clear that you are out of touch with what the actual people actually want. You're out of touch with the kinds of policies that are actually going to help people at the end of the day. And what you need are folks who are going to stand up and say, no, this is not what we need to do. What we need are people who are going to center on the climate crisis, making sure that we are not leaving out Black and brown folks, communities that are disproportionately affected with this pandemic. What we need to make sure is we have folks who are not going to take corporate PAC money, and who are going to refuse fossil fuel money, who are going to stand on their values, succeed on their values, because there's no way you're going to go into Congress when you are based on these other values, right? And because frankly, at the end of the day, corporations, when they're giving you money, they want return on their investment. And that comes in terms of votes. That comes in terms of the kinds of policies that you stop and that you actively obstruct, which is the crux of where we are, which is why we are where we are right now. I would love to know, from you all, where I feel as if today, particularly more than any other day, we are at a turning point, right, of change. I feel as if looking at the progressive races that we've seen in 2020, culminating yesterday, and then hopefully on July 7th, which is what we're planning on doing in New Jersey, what we're seeing is a movement that is burgeoning, that is cresting, where we are seeing people demand better. It is our communities that are demanding better. It is our communities across the board, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're unaffiliated, whatever it is that you are politically. We have folks, I see folks in NJ5 say, I demand better. I want somebody who is not the same old, who is not the establishment, who's not going to keep saying the same thing and keep doing the same thing over and over again. How do we harness that energy? How do we make sure we keep that energy up for the rest of 2020? And I would love to hear that. Leah, do you want to take that?
Absolutely. Well, first, I'll just start by saying I think that we are in a crucial moment right now, but I also think what you're talking about is we've been on a journey, right, in this district. And speaking as somebody who's been in touch with the amazing Indivisible group, Indivisible NJ05 in your district for a long time on these issues, this has been a journey, right, from fighting actively for Josh Gottheimer, working to reelect him in 2018. I know you were on the same boat there, to realizing exactly how damaging and how problematic his own leadership is, and how much it's actually undermined a democratic agenda, how much it's undermined all the things that we care about in Congress, and turning and embracing better and demanding real leadership, which is where we are right now. And I think that the answer for how do we keep up this energy is we elect somebody we elect somebody in the primary who's actually going to carry that real message of real solutions, of actually tackling our problems, of not being satisfied with just incremental change or with cutting deals with Republicans, or platitudes about bipartisanship. Take that forward into the general election. Now, I worked for a member of Congress who was a progressive, who represented a reddish district back in 2008 through 2010. And what we saw was progressive ideas are popular everywhere. If you are actually taking the time to communicate them, if you are talking to people about the things that they care about, if you are really genuinely engaging with your folks, people understand why the climate crisis is is absolutely crucial to address. People understand why everyone deserves healthcare. These are actually things that you can win on if you're actually taking the time and you're leading. And that is what we need to do if we're actually going to keep people energized, because the worst thing we could do is meet this moment with platitudes and just telling people to vote, as opposed to telling people to build the kind of power to actually change the world.
I agree with that 100%. And especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, right, that we've gone through. I think it hasn't ever been as clear for so many people as it has been right now about why healthcare and employment should not be tied together. There are so many people in our district, particularly now, who have lost jobs, unfortunately don't have jobs to go back to, who have lost hours, who have to scramble around for healthcare. And then my neighbors, my husband is a healthcare practitioner. He was one of the frontline healthcare workers, right? And working in a hospital with the worst hit of the COVID-19 patient. So it was coming home to me every single day and every single night. And seeing that and seeing folks who are now recovering and the long-term healthcare consequences, the bills that are coming due of thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes up to $1 million, to see that there are long-term health issues that they are not even sure how they're going to cope with. And the biggest issue is how are they going to pay for it? That is coming home now more so than it ever has before. And there are people, constituents in our district, residents who live here, who are saying, we need that single payer healthcare system. We need people who are going to fight for Medicare for all. And I think that having political leaders who are going to take what our communities are demanding and actually make them into action, instead of saying like what my opponent's saying, which is, oh, it's never going anywhere, completely stymieing it and crushing it. I think that's what's important as we try and come out of this pandemic and as we move forward. So, completely appreciate that as well. Helen, you talked about being on the ground with the Bowman race in particular. I would love to hear what that felt like, what you think is important for people to be doing right now, and what kinds of things that can you share with us with 12 and a half days to go, and I'm counting every hour at this point. What is important? What should we be doing?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, and I think in terms of what we can all be doing, take example from Sunrise, who Varsh already said, but had an amazing 14-year-old literally running some of their phone banking programs. And it's taking cues from movements and getting people who are feeling the pain and suffering and level of crises right now and are pouring out into the streets, because it's the only way we can even express what's happening right now, through direct action. And taking those people and saying, there's a home for you in this electoral fight, versus the other way around, which is often how it happens. Obviously, you're running your campaign that way, and I think that's going to be a huge part of the victory in the next couple of days. And I think that was a huge part of Bowman's race. Is he knew who he was taking cues from. He was taking cues from the amazing community groups and activists and organizers across the country who have lived a lot of these crises firsthand, have been thinking of innovative solutions for years. And he didn't just say, here, I have my own idea. He literally sought out the advice of and sought out the solutions of folks who have been living through the pain of the last few years and many years before that, and built his solutions off of that. I'll just say too, I think it's the idea that our politics are supposed to be sanitized and watered down and in moderation is insulting. And you just said that. The idea that your opponent, and he shall not be named, can't even say the words police brutality out loud. That's not about being moderate. That's insulting to people's pain and to what people are going through right now. And I think something that's so beautiful about your campaign, and I think just speaks to an enormous amount of people, and I know will be the thing that brings you across the finish line, is that you really can speak again to the true suffering that people are going through right now, and naming that and being honest about that. And I think it's so scary for people to demand more, and to admit that they're unhappy with what's going on, and it feels like you're challenging power, and you are, and that's exactly what you're doing, and that's a good thing. And I think the idea that you're campaign reflects that and sort of takes its cues from that, I really think is going to be, the key ingredient that'll pull everyone across the line. And I think, making the connection, which again, I am not the expert on this. There are many people I look up to on this call who have been doing this every single day. But again, taking the power from beautiful, amazing youth-led movements and saying there's a place for you in our electoral home. And, I'm not promising everything, but I am promising to listen to you, and I am promising a piece of justice. And when I win, you win. And so I'm excited for that. And I'm just so grateful for you for leading that way and being honest about the roots and the rotting of the society we live in right now, and saying things like Medicare for all and defunding the police and being honest about the solutions we need to invest in. And, just allowing people in NJ5 to dream a little bit, I think is also a beautiful thing and deeply appreciated, and definitely something we saw, I saw in the Bowman race and have seen in all of the races from last night. It was candidates who said, I'm going to let you dream about your future and talk to you about it. And I think that sort of political imagination is just exactly what you've been doing. And, we all have gratitude for it, but I also just think it's a winning ingredient. And we saw that last night. So I'm excited to have that, pull you across the finish line. And I will make the plug that everyone watching should definitely go on right now. And you can do two things. You can donate, and you can also sign up and make calls in the time of coronavirus. Those are two awesome things to do. So I would encourage everyone to do that, especially if it's your first time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that, Helen. And I appreciate anybody and everybody who wants to be part of this movement and part of our campaign. It is critical that we do what we're doing. Helen, one thing that you said actually just struck with me so much. And it was something that I actually shared today about imagining a world, right, where we are looking at policy from the point of view of love and caring for everybody, and looking at policy and from a way of centering justice for everyone rather than things that we can't do. I will say that was a journey, right? When I got in here, it was more about making sure that we had moral leaders, that we had lines in the sand that we were drawing, and that we were fighting. And even as I've gone through this campaign, I had somebody ask me this. They're like, well, imagine what happens when you actually succeed. And it took me a long time to think about that. And that is the problem, right? We have been stymied because we have had limitations put on us, that we have a lack of imagination, and we have to struggle to think beyond that. And this is why the Sunrise Movement, for example, is so inspiring, right? Because we have young people who haven't had those limitations, or at least not in the same way as some of us, right? Who are inspiring because they are challenging us to dream. They are opening those doors and saying, here's what could happen. Why are you okay with the way things are right now? And that is what fuels the campaign that we are running in NJ5, which is part of what is really what's needed when we talk about reimagining, when we talk about building systems or rebuilding systems that are based on equity, that we are talking about centering all of these important things that we're talking about. It's just exactly what you pointed out. So I appreciate you actually sharing that here. And I see Imani has joined us. Thank you, Imani, for getting on. We were actually just talking about the great wins, about the progressive movement and where we're going from here in NJ5. So I'll let you catch your breath for a minute. But Adam, tell me what you think about where we go from here, right? The progressive movement, how are you pivoting for the rest of July? What are our priorities and how you think that can, fit into NJ5?
Yeah, let me merge that with the last question you posed about how we keep people, motivated about this particular district, and picking up on something that Helen was talking about, giving people a permission structure to dream, right? In organizing, when we write emails every day, when we ask people to do stuff every day, there's this idea of theory of change, right? How will the action I'm taking right now actually effectuate the change I want to see in the world? And that's sometimes really hard, right? Signing a petition to Donald Trump usually doesn't meet that standard, right? It's like, will people actually listen? Will the actual effects happen? So I think part one of it in this case is just you, right? I think I'm convinced that anybody who sees you speak gets the theory of change on a substantive level, right? All the values that you've been talking about, Medicare for all, Green New Deal. I would add that, as we saw yesterday, a president who didn't understand what the 19 in COVID-19 was, and here we have a scientist who could be elected to Congress, in terms of someone who meets the moment and can help get us out of this mess. I think part one is just imagining the substance. Check, right? To your last question about the movement part, yesterday I think helps fill in the blanks for a lot of people about how this is doable in the primary, right? In my mind, the Jamal Bowman victory and the Charles Booker almost victory, we think that that'll happen, are perfect examples of the idea that progressives never again have to settle for the establishment putting their finger on the scale against us. If enough of us are all in together organizing, we can win, right? Just a couple weeks ago, Charles Booker was double digits behind. A month ago, Bowman was behind 2-1 in their own polling. And, boom, organizing did the trick, inspiring candidate did the trick. So this is doable, right? The last question is, okay, and you hear this sometimes with the Charles Booker race and sometimes with your race. Well, if we win the primary, can our progressive candidate win the general, right? Now, polling in Kentucky shows that Booker is actually more competitive against McConnell than the opponent. But with you actually on a Zoom call with our members said a fact that I just saw people's light bulbs go off when you said it. And I'm gonna ask you to help me out here for a second. Josh Gottheimer, when he won the first time, won by about 2 points.
Yep.
And since this resistance moment, when he got reelected, what was the margin in the district?
14 points in 2018.
14 points. So this has gone from a 2-point to a 4-point Democratic district in this environment. And it's like, why are we settling for someone who is willing to cage kids at the border and undermine Green New Deal and Medicare for All? That makes no sense. If anything, we're more competitive at this moment. Our people who were passionate in 2018 will be more likely to come out in this moment if they have someone inspiring on the ballot. So I think it's check, check, check. The substance is there. Yesterday proved that as a movement, we can do this. And the numbers in your district show this is a trending Democratic district and you're the perfect person to win. So I think all of us just need to be all in for the next 12 and a half days. And it's super exciting to think about.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that stat that I mentioned, it's real, right? Like I've lived this because in 2016, he was my first non-presidential lawn sign on my lawn, right? I thought that he was the guy who was, who's going to be in Congress, especially with the presidential election going the way it went. And not only did he not do that, he continued to undermine our chief. I love that, Adam. The entire time. But in 2018, we didn't have an alternative. And we saw the way he was going. We thought, okay, we still need to keep this district blue. So with Indivisible, with the collection of groups that we had under Indivisible, we went knocking on doors. We knocked on more than 30,000 doors, right, for him. I knocked on a whole bunch myself. I had a whole big GOTV canvas, 60 people, knocking on doors for him. So we came in, won by 14 points. That grassroots energy, right, as Adam just pointed out, it is not there for him. It is there for us. It is there with more than 1,000 volunteers that we have, with more than 100 student fellows who are here working tirelessly to make sure that this district stays blue, but has a real progressive Democrat in power. And I think that's really important because part of the critical nature of this particular race is the fact that there is all this fear, right? All this fear that somehow we're going to lose. And I think that, Adam put it really well. We're not going to lose because the kinds of things that we're doing, the kind of seismic shift that we've had in NJ5 is the one that demands that we have better representatives. It demands that we have folks who are going to be leading with their values. And if we don't, that's the danger. That's the danger of turning off our communities. That's a danger of turning off people who really need for us to do more. So Imani, thank you so much for coming on. I would love for you to talk about what you're doing now. And I know that we've known each other for a while and you've been on these town halls more than once. So I appreciate you coming on again. Would love to hear from you from yesterday and the kind of, from the perspective of building the movement and where you see where we are at right now in NJ5 with 12 and a half days to go. I keep saying that because it's the home stretch.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you for bringing me back and everything. And I was really excited yesterday because as everyone on this call knows, this year has been pretty rough on progressives. I mean, it just felt like we were just fighting the good fight, and just like, at a moment it would be, kind of snatched away from us. So I am ecstatic about yesterday. There were so many good wins. It seemed like it was kind of like a boost of morale for progressives, which makes me just incredibly happy, because like your morale keeps people in the fight. It keeps people believing in progressive values, believing in progressive candidates. So like I'm ecstatic about yesterday. But as far as NJ5 is concerned, everything that you all were just saying is completely correct. And I was actually thinking about this earlier, that it's very interesting that a lot of folks who are against progressives and who, are like kind of the anti-progressive movement in a way, and those who still identify as Democrats but are anti-progressive Democrat. It's interesting because they are often willing to put up with somebody who would vote with a Republican on really bad issues, right? Like, it's not just like, I don't know, I can't really think of like a conservative issue that's not awful, but like it's not like something that's just kind of surfacey, right? These are like, like Adam said, kids being thrown in cages at the border. These are things like like pro-choice and like things that are just like very, very important, that really affect humans deeply. And it's almost like those who are against the progressives put it in such a personal lens that they're willing to back someone like that over progressive values. And progressive values are really just like people values. They're really just the values of everyday humans, and respecting them as human beings and what they need in this life to go forward and just live with dignity. And so I really, really, really need you to win in NJ5. I'm sure you need it more, but but I'm just saying, like, we really could use that win, because we need people who are there not because it's like just a power grab. We need people who are there because they're considering how policy affects real people every day. And that's how I see this race in NJ5. It's a person, which is you, who's fighting for like real humans and getting them real things that they need, versus somebody who takes, a lot of money from corporations, somebody who is willing to vote with Republicans on, again, very bad issues, like not issues that's kind of like really bad issues. And so that's how I'm seeing this in NJ5. So 12 days, hope folks can, get out and cast that vote, because we need it.
Yeah, we sure do. Thanks, Imani. I will say that, when we were talking about this, and we've talked about this a little bit, right, before. So we talk about people giving lip service. We talk about people, saying that they have a D next to their name, and therefore, they have a certain set of values that they don't actually manifest or vote for. I think what we need to talk about, and we've said it before, is justice, right? Framing our policies in terms of what brings the most justice. How are we going to be able to have equity? So even when we talk about choice and reproductive choice, I think what we need is to not just be okay with somebody who claims that they're pro-choice. We need somebody who's going to be there and say, no, I stand for reproductive justice. And that means centering around things like Black maternal health care. That means making sure that we are showing up over and over again for all women everywhere, including trans women, that we don't put people in boxes, and that we don't just say, this is, check that off, I'm pro-choice here. And I think that's a very deliberate choice that we need folks to make, right? And so same thing with when we're talking about systems of racism that we need to dismantle. And I would love to hear more from you all about this intersection of the pandemic, of systemic racism and the Black Lives Matter movement, particularly now, and climate crisis. All of these together, I feel as if, I said at the beginning, we're crises upon crises upon crises, and what this calls for in the progressive movement. Because what I see in New Jersey Vibe are people who are seeing and feeling and the enormity of the kinds of things that are happening, and calling out for political leaders who are going to really lead on these issues, who are going to say, yes, the system is broken. The systems have been broken for a long time and they don't work for a lot of us. And so we need to dismantle them and we need to rebuild for a more sustainable and more resilient future. And it might not be easy, but this is the opportunity for us to be able to do that. And I'd love to see and hear from you about how to use the progressive movement and what it means for you to do that. Varshini, I don't know if you want to start by taking that off, but.
Yeah, big question. I think, when I think about how these different crises intersect, it's like there is not a single point at which they do not touch. It is at the root of the crisis, it is at the impact of the crisis, and it is at the solution of the crisis. When we look at what has actually caused the climate crisis, like, you think we would not have had a Green New Deal a decade ago if Black Lives mattered? No, we would have fixed that right after Katrina. You think we would not have a Green New Deal right after Keystone XL and the Dakota Access Pipeline? No, because we would have declared that Indigenous people have rights and have sovereignty, and we would have made those choices to stop pipelines in the moment. To me, it's not about carbon in the atmosphere. It's not about any of that. If we actually valued human life equally and pursued justice, we would not be in a climate crisis. There would be no such thing as environmental degradation and sacrifice zones and all of the horrid things that communities of color and poor people have to undergo in this country. I think the same thing could be said for our healthcare system. And so to me, and then you're looking at the impacts, right? You're seeing people who have to live near polluting refineries, having issues with asthma, and then contracting COVID and having complications from it. You're seeing people who exist, poor folks, particularly Black and brown folks who live in food deserts, having to experiencing greater levels of heart disease and obesity, and then having complications from the coronavirus. And so these issues are so connected. You're seeing 40 plus million people who are unemployed right now in an economy that we knew was broken, that was nauseatingly unequal before coronavirus ever started. This is an economy that was broken from the beginning. And if we think that we are going to get out of this crisis by returning back to that economy, just no, we can't do that. And so I think right now, this moment is calling on us to say, how do we actually put back tens of millions of people who are unemployed into jobs that are good paying, that are unionized, that are doing the important work of tackling the climate crisis? How do we ensure that healthcare is guaranteed for all people coming out of this crisis? How do we make sure that the solutions, because there is no such thing as a race neutral policy, right? There's either a racist policy or there's an anti-racist policy. And people like you, Arati, are on the side of saying, we need racial justice and our communities cannot wait any longer. And that could be applied to virtually any other issue out there. There's no way to pull these issues apart. I think they connect at all levels. And I think if our Congress people and our politicians cannot understand that, and they're trying to dissect and pull apart our lives, they're never going to understand the holistic solutions that are at our fingertips when we're in the midst of a pandemic like the coronavirus crisis.
Yeah, I appreciate that and agree with it. Imani, do you want to share that, your thoughts on this, especially given the dynamics of New Jersey and where we are and where we hope to be?
Yeah, I mean, given everything that's going on, especially with everything surrounding police brutality, right now I've been working with progressives in the state on different pledges and different types of, I know that, reform isn't the greatest word as of right now, but essentially, some reforms that we're trying to push through the works. And, we need folks. One of the things that we found was that there are a lot of elected officials who, because of the way campaigns are run and because of the power of money and police unions, that they create policies in certain ways that really don't benefit the people. when it comes to bad law enforcement interactions. And, you know, one of the things that we need to start separating, the way I think what's caught on now is a separation of elected officials and corporations, right? And candidates and corporations. Like that's pretty much caught on. Folks are like, yeah, I get that. I think the next step is for us to then take the step of, okay, politicians, you also need to separate yourself from law enforcement if you cannot make real policy and real legislation that would stop bad police tactics and, racist police tactics and things of that nature. And so, just looking at Gottheimer's past, he has not been the person to do those things I'm just talking about. And, we need folks who will get in there and really take an honest look at what's happening in law enforcement and how they're treating the community and make changes. I mean, people are dying, right? Like, again, it goes back to the whole idea of humanism. Like these are human beings that are being that are being beaten, that are being mistreated, that are being killed. And we need elected officials who can take an honest look at that and not have kind of their own self-interest of, oh, well, this group gives me this much money. Maybe they can kill people just a little. Like we don't, you know what I mean? We don't need that. We don't need that. We need folks who can take an honest look and take honest action that can really push us forward and propel this issue in a positive way.
No, I agree with that. And, when we talk about taking that pledge of not taking money from police unions, from those particular organizations, this is something that, I've done, that I know that we talked about with Adam with the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, moving forward with that as well as a lot of other organizations. I think that the root of that problem, right, happens to be with the way we glorify law enforcement. And that is not to say that obviously we're not, in general, saying that that law enforcement has zero role. But I think that when we talk about law enforcement and we talk about public safety and we talk about how we actually give greater than a minimal benefit of doubt to folks in uniform, to folks who are doing things that are frankly above the law. And when we talk at the same time with how we treat Black folks, how we treat Black men, and how we undervalue, diminish, and dehumanize them, I think, and when you bring both of those things together, the fact that we don't have enough leaders, that we don't have enough folks in the community who understand and who can see that greater inequity is really what is killing people on a daily basis is completely abhorrent, right? That's a moral imperative for us to fix. It is not just about a police contract. It's not just about who's getting money for X, Y, and Z. It's about our morality and it's about our humanity at the end of the day. And I think making sure that we talk about it in that way and have folks who are able to share that and lead on it is absolutely imperative. And we're not going to get changes unless we do that. Unless we stop glorifying this culture of militarizing police and having them as if they're going to solve all of our problems, where the root is injustice, where the root is inequity, where the root is, systems of racism that we're building them on, and to get to actually strengthening our social safety net, to get through talking about, Varshini, you were talking about the kinds of things that we need in the economy as we move forward, which is, I agree, federal jobs guarantee. We need good paying jobs. We need to make sure that when we're making that shift, that has been necessary to be made for decades now, in terms of a future that doesn't include fossil fuels. This is the time for us to use that framework of the Green New Deal to be able to do that. And we absolutely need more people in Congress. We need them at all levels, including the local level, where we are going to be pushing for that. But we absolutely need that. It's imperative at the congressional level, at the national level, for us to be able to shift that now more than ever. Because, yeah, we have millions and millions of people who are out of work, and they need help now, more than ever. Helen, you've been, again, and Leo, you've both been in the middle of a lot of primaries, a lot of progressive issues and the movement as it's built, and the journey that we started talking about in the beginning. I would love to hear, actually for all of you, your message to the progressive movement. As we wrap up, the progressive movement about NJ5, why it's so critical to keep pushing what we're building here, what we have built here over the years, and why we all need to be involved, and why we, and how and what a difference that makes. So if you want to go first, Leah, please, or Helen, either way. Uh-oh.
I think you're on mute, Leah. Sorry.
Sorry. Absolutely. Well, so I guess I would start by saying, one of the conversations that we sometimes have within our movement, and this is to echo the other folks on the panel, is, primaries can be divisive. And, our answer is, what's divisive is a guy who goes to Washington and organizes to undermine a Democratic agenda and give money to Customs and Border Patrol at a moment when they are building concentration camps. That's divisive. Somebody with a bold vision for the future, that is not divisive, that's vision. And that's what we need right now, because the worst thing we could do in this moment, when our systems are failing us, when we're seeing exactly how much institutions were never designed to represent us, when people are struggling with their healthcare, with their jobs, with the economy, with systemic racism, all these things are very much on the surface. The worst thing that we could do in this moment, when people are organized and energized and taking to the streets to demand real change, is elect the kind of people who are hiding under their chairs and hoping that all the energy goes away so that they can go back to taking big checks from corporations in order to make deals that deliver for those corporations. What we need are people who are going to stand up, who are going to have a vision, who are going to be responsive to the moment, and who are actually going to lead us forward. And that is why we are so excited about New Jersey's 5th. That is why we are so excited. 12 days left and going to work as hard as we can. But also what we're seeing everywhere is that people are responding right now. People are excited. They know that change is possible. They are starting to feel the hope that comes with seeing the results around the country. And so we know that this is a race that is going to make history again, that is going to really help us build the progressive majority that we need in Congress, that is actually going to deliver for everybody once we get there. So it's an honor to be here with you tonight, and it is going to be an honor in 12 days to elect you as the Democrat, or to have you win the primary for a Democratic nomination.
Thanks so much, Leah. Helen?
Yeah, Leah said it all per usual. I would just add, something I have been saying to everyone. I've seen so many friends and colleagues and neighbors and my family even volunteering and donating to Progressive Challengers for the first time in their life. And something, to Leah's point, it can feel divisive. And often what we have to remind people of is what is divisive, again, is human suffering and someone who is lying to you every day as they say they represent you. And so I would just say, we, in the same way that we are all agreeing, or many of us in the progressive movement are agreeing that we need to completely buck the system. There's no time for incremental change. There's no time for chipping away at systems we know have failed people and we know have actively harmed people. And actually asking us to do that again is insulting. And so we are agreeing that we need to start from the beginning and root out, the evils from their inception. And like you said, be honest about about the bold solutions we need. But what I would say is also just, we need to erase our image that consultants in DC have told us are what good candidates look like and act like. And like, where did that roadmap come from that, has not been proven to work? We're told that, again, it's a thing where it's often we are on the receiving end of this advice in the progressive movement. All of us, I'm sure, have gotten this many times, where it's sort of like, settle down, don't ask for too much. And I think that's often something we experience. And I'm sure you have experienced it many times in elections and campaigns. And so I would just say, I'm so proud and so excited for you and so jealous. And I'm telling all of my friends and all of the super volunteers that worked in New York on many of the races that it is about an hour and 9-minute drive to NJ5. And so if they want to hitch on over there, they definitely should. But just encourage people that we need to erase the image and the idea of what, again, consultants and fancy people have told us is the correct candidate and the ideal candidate. We know progressives can win everywhere. We know progressives and progressive ideas are popular. progressive candidates and challengers in particular, and particularly you. We know they can win in the suburbs, they can win in cities. There is no roadmap for just saying, challengers can only win in these sorts of districts or in hyper blue districts, and that's it. We know that people right now are responding to politicians, elected officials, candidates, leaders who are being honest about what we're facing, and that's you, and you have been that since the beginning in the trenches of a really difficult race. And so I will do my best to remind everyone of that they should scrap whatever they have been told is acceptable and okay, and instead look directly at your race and see what the future is. So once again, totally everyone should go volunteer and make calls and donate. This is a great first race to jump into too, and a great place to channel a lot of the energy from last night.
Oh, thank you so much. This is great. Imani, speaking of making sure we're building people who reflect the communities that we're serving and who reflect what America looks like, and who are making sure that we're elevating them and having them be in positions of power. I would love for you to summarize, have the last word as we go out and end this town hall. What should we be doing? Please share with NJ5 what that you think that we should all be doing in the last 12 days to make sure this works.
Yeah. So in the last next 12 days, like was always said, make sure folks donate to you, make sure folks get out, make phone calls for you, make sure that folks vote for you, because you can do all that stuff, but if you're in the district and you don't vote, we need that. And just really, really help to get the word out about this race, especially in New Jersey. And I would also say, take a look at your ballot. If you are a voter in NJ5, you are going to have to look on the ballot for Arati's name. I want to stress that to everyone in New Jersey. We have a very special ballot here. And so if you want to make change on election day on the 7th, look on the ballot, find Arati's name. And tell everyone, because folks watching this call, right, you might be more inclined to do that anyway, but maybe you have family members or friends who aren't as civically engaged as you are. Make sure you talk to them about New Jersey's ballot setup, and make sure you let them know, hey, Arati is a great person. She needs to be the person representing us. You got to look for her on the ballot, because New Jersey has a special ballot, and it's not special in a good way. So if you really, really want to make change, really, really do your homework on who is on the ballot and where they're going to be placed. So that would definitely be my for the next 12 days. That's what everybody needs to be doing: informing people about the ballot, making phone calls. I guess you have a text thing going as well, and donating, and we can push this. We can push this and win on the 7th.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Thank you, Adam and Varshini, who had to jump off. I'm going to end by saying that I will say I've been thrilled since last night. And, the entire race that we have worked so hard with, the grassroots energy that we have at NJ5. And we're taking that energy, that power that comes off of yesterday, and we're moving that to make sure that we win, because we are the next race to watch. All eyes should be on us, because we are going to make it happen on the 7th. And we're only going to make it happen if you can come on board, volunteer with us, phone bank for us, text bank, tell all your friends, like everyone here has mentioned. We know that people vote when their friends and family tell them who to vote for. And absolutely, in New Jersey, you have to look for my name. In Bergen County, it's column 3. And you have to bubble that in black. We all have vote by mail ballots. You should have all received them by now. Please sign them, seal them, mail them in before July 7th. It is imperative. And with your help, with that grassroots energy, especially in the last 12 days, we are absolutely going to make this happen. This is going to shock the rest of New Jersey and the rest of the nation, but we know what we have here. It is special. It is going to happen if you come on board and help us out. So thank you so much. Leah, thank you for being on board. It's been a pleasure to be on here with you. Helen, same. It's been incredible to hear your stories and how we can make it happen. And I'm really excited. And of course, Imani, love to see you again. And we're gonna do this in 12 days. So thank you all very much. And thank you all for watching. And let's do this.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.